Hi and welcome back to MS Projects 2013 tutorial. In video 8 we're going to cover the following: resource calendar allocation, assigning resources to a task, cost table, calendar view, form view, split view, timeline view, and adding a WBS column to the entry table. Can allocate resources, we need to go in and make sure that the resources have got the correct calendars associated with them. To do this, I move down to the status bar, click on the resource sheet button and go in. The architect, he can use the contractor's calendar. Same thing with the draft person. They all work their own times, so they probably work over weekends and public holidays, so they can use the contractors. Building clerk will use an e-learning calendar, so it goes for the rest of the resources that have been assigned to this project. As you can see, selecting the calendar is quite laborious from the point of view that you have to select each resource and assign the calendar. There is a quicker way to do that. Select the calendar that you want to copy. Use your autofill button on the right hand side over here. Notice it changes to a crosshair. Click on it and drag down. Release it. See, it automatically updates and copies the same calendar to everybody. You'll notice that certain of these fields have not been populated. The reason for that is because paint and building permits are not associated with calendars. Once you've assigned the calendars to each resource, it's now time to assign resources to the actual project task itself. To do that, make sure that you're back in Gantt chart view. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in and show you the first way to add resources, and the first way is by going onto your resource tab at the top, clicking on it to change over. The important thing here that we're going to look at is to assign a resource. As you can see, that falls under the assignment group. The first thing to do is select tasks that you want to assign. Click on it. Click on Assign Resources. And as you can see, it's brought up this dialog box where I can go in and I can select each resource as I need and add them to this specific task. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to assign the architect. Select on it. Select it. Click on Architect. And he's now been added at 100% units. And you still need to go in and add his cost, which we shall do shortly. Next, scroll down, see if there's any further people. Yes, myself. Select and assign. And so we go through until we find all the people that need to be assigned to that specific task. Once you've added them, on the close button, and you'll see that you've added your resources. Scroll to the right hand side, and there we go. You can see the resources have been added. Once again, notice the blue areas that have been affected by adding these resources together. I just turn the cells blue, and you can see now that they've, in one way or the other, affected the whole project. Next, I'm going to show you how to add the resource column. To make it easier to add resources, move your slider to the right hand side to give yourself some more space. We have already got it added. Right, as you can see there, in task number 2, we have 2 resources added to that, and that is the architect and Harold Elston. I'm going to select the next task, click on it. Notice, because I'm clicking on the resource name column in the cell, it's brought up a drop-down list. Click on the drop-down list, and here's a complete list of everybody who is on the project. So what I can do now is I can go in and I can select each person as necessary. Once again, as you can see, I can select multiple people. Once I've selected them, push enter, and notice how they've been added to the resource name column as well as to the Gantt chart. Now that we have assigned resources to the tasks in the project, let's have a look at project costs. During the planning of our project, you can estimate resource costs. However, you'll need to estimate costs carefully to determine your project budget. Project helps you calculate resource costs at both individual and overall project level. You can enter resource costs in either the resource sheet view or on the cost table. I'm going to show you how to access the cost table now. To do that, click on Views, go over here to Tables, under the Data group, click on there, click on Cost under the built-in groups, and notice how it's now added the cost table for me. Cost table is much like an Excel spreadsheet again, where it contains cells where the values can be added. As you'll notice, I'm busy sizing the columns so that the columns can be read properly. Looking at the cost table, starting on the left hand side, it's got the task name. The next column, fixed cost. Then you've got fixed cost accrual. The fixed cost accrual is as we are building up the costing of resources on each task. Then we've got the total cost, showing us what the total cost of our project is going to be. We've got our baseline cost. We'll discuss baselines later. We've got variance. We'll discuss that later as well. Then actual. This is where you can go in and add the actual costing per task. To go back to my entry table, I click on the table drop-down list and select entry. From here I'm going to go back to my resource sheet in the status bar. Now, as you can see here, there are three costs. I have mentioned these before. Here we have the standard cost. This is the cost that is incurred to pay a resource for the hours that the resource has worked on the task during the standard working hours as defined in a project. Then we have the overtime cost. The cost incurred to pay a resource for the hours that the resource has worked during overtime, in other words outside standard working hours. Then we have the per use cost. The cost incurred for the use of every unit of resource in a task. Per use cost is commonly used for resource materials such as gravel, wood and paint. The project multiplies the per use cost by the number of units of the material used for the task to determine the total cost of the task and the resource. Throughout this tutorial, we've worked with some of the views available within MS Projects. What I'd like to show you next is some of the other different views available. The first one I'm going to show you here is the calendar view. To get to the calendar view, move your cursor to the left hand side, to the view bar, and click on calendar. As you'll notice, it now has opened up into calendar view, and the calendar pane is split up into two sections. On the left hand side, the month section, showing you the different months of the year, as you can see now. And then on the right hand side, a more pictorial view showing you your tasks within the days of the week. And as you can see, it shows you 4 weeks at a time. If I want to move backwards and forwards between these months, all I do is I move my cursor down to the arrow over here that shows to the left, which is your previous button, and I click on it. And as you can see, it takes me through. To get back again, I use the next button, and I click on that. Notice as I'm clicking, the months are changing next to it on the right hand side. If I want to change the look of this graphical view on the right hand side over here, I click on the week tab, and notice it now shows me only the days of the week for 1 week at a time. And as you can see, it's got the bar across showing what task is being assigned for that week. Let's have a look at some more views that are available within MS Projects 2013. We've spoken about the calendar view, the Gantt chart view, and the network diagram view. The next thing that I'd like to show you is applying some of the form views. And the first one here is the task form view. Notice when I click on it, it changes my whole screen. This screen now provides me with details on a single task. If I want to move about within the screen, I click on the previous or next buttons, as I'm showing you now. If I want to move on to the next task, I push the next button. As I go through, you can see it's bringing up the task name, duration, whether it's effort driven and manually scheduled, the start and finish dates, task type, and the percentage complete. Below that you've got dual columns, and as you can see it's showing on the left hand side resource name. There it shows you the resource ID number, the resource name, how many units the person's been assigned, and how many work hours to date. Standard task sheet or entry table. Next we have task usage. If I click on that, I can now go in, and instead of having the Gantt chart on the right hand side, I've now got an entry table where I can go in and actually mark off my task usage. Next is the timeline. We'll come back to the timeline in a short while. Then tracking Gantt. We'll discuss that later on in the advanced section. Resource form brings us our standard form, as you can see there, showing the resource name at the top, initials to the right of that, how many units a person has been allocated. You've got your previous and next buttons, standard rate, rate per use, overtime rate, whether it's accrued or not. Then it's got your base calendar, your group. Below that is the actual task information. As you can see, the project's name in the first column, in the second column the task ID, in the next column the task name, then the hours, leveling, if there should be any leveling delays that need to be done. Any task delays will be shown on the next column, your scheduled start and your scheduled finish. Resource graph we shall cover later in the advanced section. Team planner we'll also cover advanced section. Then we've got more views. If I click on that, it brings up this dialog box here, giving me a lot more views that I can have a look at or use, views that I can use within the project. The last thing I want to show you is here on the view ribbon. Make sure that the view ribbon is showing and move to the right hand side where it says split view. You'll notice two things here, timeline and details. If I put the timeline on, notice what it looks like. Now add the timeline, and if I scroll through, it zooms in as we previously discussed in one of the previous modules. Below the timeline is details. If I click on that, it will allow me to select different views in split form view over here. At the top it's showing me my task entry with a Gantt chart, and below that it is showing me my task form view. If I want to change to network diagram view, I click on it, and as you can see it's now changed the view. I've got a dual view. I want to remove the split. Two ways of doing it, by either removing the check mark or alternatively moving down to the middle of the screen over here till the arrow becomes a double arrow like that, and click on it and it will remove the split. The last thing I want to show you in this video is how to set up the WBS column within your task entry view. I move my cursor to where I want to put the column, right click on it, insert column, type in WBS for work breakdown structure and enter. And now you can see it has gone in and put our WBS on the left hand side of the info column. Right, we've come to the end of this video. Thanks for your time. Hope to see you in the next one. See you in a bit.